The phone buzzed like a hornet trapped in Anthony's pocket, shattering the fragile peace of his Brooklyn studio apartment. He snatched it up, heart slamming against his ribs, and froze at the name. Sarah, his estranged sister, the last tether to a family he'd severed like a gangrenous limb. "Dad's dead." Her voice cracked over the line, not with grief, but accusation. "And if you don't show up to the funeral, you're killing him all over again." Anthony slammed the phone down, the screen cracking against the scarred wooden table like the snap of a bone. Rain lashed the fire escape outside his window, mirroring the storm churning in his gut, a toxic brew of rage and regret that had been simmering since the day he'd walked out of that suffocating Ohio farmhouse 12 years ago. At 18, fresh-faced and terrified, he'd confessed his truth to his parents over a dinner of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "I'm gay. And I can't pretend anymore." His father's fork had clattered to the plate, eyes narrowing like storm clouds. "This ain't our boy," he'd growled, while his mother wept silent tears, clutching her cross necklace as if it could exorcise the demon she'd birthed. Sarah, just 16 then, had stared at him with wide, betrayed eyes, whispering, "Why can't you just be normal?" Tony, that night, the house had erupted, screams echoing through the cornfields, his father's Bible-thumping rants about fire and brimstone clashing with Anthony's desperate pleas. By dawn, he'd packed a duffel bag with nothing but a toothbrush, his high school diploma, and a wad of crumpled 20s from his summer job at the mill. He hitched a ride to Cleveland, then another to New York, vowing never to look back. The city swallowed him whole, its neon veins pulsing with possibility, its alleys reeking of garbage and second chances. He crashed on couches, slung coffee at a midtown diner, and learned to navigate the underground pulse of Greenwich Village bars, where men like him could finally breathe without apology. It was in one of those dimly lit dives, the Stonewall Echo, a nod to the riots that had cracked open the closet door for a generation, that Anthony first laid eyes on Matthew. It was a sticky July night in 2015, the air thick with cigarette smoke and the thrum of indie rock. Anthony, 23 and nursing a cheap beer, felt the weight of another fruitless grinder date lift when Matthew slid onto the stool beside him. Tall, with tousled chestnut hair that caught the bar lights like burnished copper, and eyes the color of Lake Erie on a clear day, blue-green and endlessly deep, Matthew ordered a whiskey neat and flashed a grin that could disarm a bomb. "You look like you could use a real conversation," Matthew said, his voice carrying that easy Midwestern lilt Anthony knew too well, but softened by years in the city. "I'm Matt. Just moved here from Chicago." "You, Anthony." "From nowhere important." He hesitated, the old reflex kicking in, but Matthew's gaze held no judgment, only a quiet curiosity that made Anthony's chest ache with something dangerously close to hope. They talked until last call, about everything and nothing. Matthew was a graphic designer, chasing freelance gigs in a city that chewed up dreamers like bubblegum. He'd grown up in a split-level ranch in the suburbs, with a mom who baked apple pies and a dad who coached Little League, but the closet had been his prison until college. "Coming out was like jumping off a cliff," Matthew confessed, tracing the rim of his glass. "Scary as hell, but once you're falling, you realize you can fly." Anthony nodded, the words unlocking something in him. For the first time, he shared fragments of his own story, the farmhouse rejection, the Greyhound bus to freedom, the nights he'd cried himself to sleep wondering if love was just a fairy tale for straight folks. Matthew listened without interrupting, his hand brushing Anthony's in a gesture so casual it felt revolutionary. When the bartender flicked the lights, Matthew leaned in. "Walk with me? The night's too good to end here." They wandered the village streets, shoulders bumping under the sodium glow of street lamps, laughing about bad tattoos and worse exes. At Washington Square Park, they claimed a bench beneath the arch. The fountains murmur a soft underscore to their confessions. Matthew's fingers intertwined with Anthony's, calluses from sketching rough against smooth skin, and when their lips met, tentative at first, then hungry, it was like the world had tilted back on its axis. Anthony tasted salt and possibility, Matthew's stubble grazing his cheek like a promise. That kiss ignited 6 months of feverish romance. They sublet a one-bedroom in Bushwick, walls papered with Matthew's sketches and Anthony's Polaroids of their adventures. Stolen weekends in the Hamptons, where they'd race waves at dawn, lazy Sundays at the cloisters, feeding each other grapes while debating Monet versus Banksy. Anthony landed a job as a barista at a hipster cafe in Williamsburg, his tips funding date nights at hole-in-the-wall Takarius. Matthew's career blossomed. He scored a contract designing album covers for indie bands, his talent as vivid as his laugh. But love, Anthony learned, was a jealous god. It demanded sacrifices. When his mother called 6 months in, her voice frail over the crackle of a bad connection, begging him to come home for Christmas, he'd frozen, phone trembling in his hand. "Dad's sorry, Tony. He misses his boy. Please." Matthew, curled on the couch with a sketchpad, looked up, eyes soft with understanding. "Go if you want. But only if it's for you, not them." He didn't go. Instead, they spent the holiday baking gingerbread men in their tiny kitchen, Matthew drawing absurd faces on the dough while Anthony recounted ghost stories from his Ohio youth. It was the happiest Christmas of his life, until New Year's Eve, when a drunk dial from Sarah shattered the illusion. "You're a selfish fag," she slurred, the word landing like a slap. "Ruining everything. Dad's drinking again because of you." Anthony hung up, chest heaving, and Matthew held him through the sobs, whispering, "They're wrong. You're enough." Yet doubt crept in like fog off the East River. Anthony threw himself into work, picking up extra shifts, while Matthew's late nights at the studio grew longer. One evening, returning early from a double, Anthony found the apartment empty, a half-eaten pizza congealing on the counter. Panic clawed at him until his phone lit up, a text from Matthew. "Stuck at clients. Love you. Home soon." Relief flooded him, but so did a whisper of unease, the first crack in their foundation. Spring bloomed, and with it, plans. Matthew proposed during a picnic in Prospect Park, on one knee amid cherry blossoms, a simple silver band glinting in his palm. "Marry me, Anth. Let's make this forever." Tears stung Anthony's eyes as he said yes, the ring sliding onto his finger like destiny. They dreamed of a small ceremony in the village, vows exchanged under the rainbow flags that fluttered like guardian angels. But summer brought shadows. Matthew's freelance dried up, rejections piled like unpaid bills. Anthony suggested he reach out to old contacts in Chicago, but Matthew waved it off. "Nah, we'll ride it out. New York's our home." Tension simmered, snapped words over forgotten laundry, silences heavy as lead. One night, after a fight about money that escalated into accusations of neglect, Anthony stormed out, wandering the bridges until dawn. He returned to find Matthew asleep on the couch, sketchpad clutched like a lifeline, pages filled with portraits of them. Laughing, loving, lost. Forgiveness came slow, but it came. They recommitted, attending couples therapy in a cramped office overlooking the Williamsburg Bridge. The therapist, a no-nonsense dyke named Carla, peeled back layers. Anthony's abandonment wounds fueling his fear of loss, Matthew's perfectionism masking his own insecurities. Love isn't a fix, she'd say. It's a mirror, session by session. They rebuilt, stronger, their bond a tapestry woven from vulnerability. By fall, Matthew landed a gig, designing branding for a queer nonprofit in Hell's Kitchen. Celebration sex on the fire escape, city lights twinkling below, felt like reclaiming stolen joy. Anthony, promoted to shift lead at the cafe, surprised him with tickets to a Broadway revival of Angels in America. In the theater's hush, as Prior Walter defied heaven and hell, Anthony gripped Matthew's hand, whispering, "That's us." Unbreakable. Winter wrapped them in its chill embrace, but their warmth held. They hosted Friendsgiving, toasting with spiked cider to absent families. Matthew's folks, supportive but distant. Anthony's, a void he filled with chosen kin. As snow dusted the burrows, Anthony traced lazy circles on Matthew's chest, murmuring, "I never thought I'd have this." "You," Matthew kissed his temple. "Me neither. But here we are." The call came on a Tuesday in late January. Gray skies bleeding into Anthony's shift. Sarah's number again. But this time, her voice was stripped bare. "He's gone. Tony." Heart attack in the barn. Funeral Saturday. Silence stretched, taut as a wire. Anthony's vision blurred. The espresso machine hissed like distant thunder. He hung up without a word, the weight of 12 years crashing down. Matthew found him later, slumped against the fridge, staring at nothing. "Babe, what happened?" "Dad." The syllable cracked. "Dead." Matthew pulled him close, arms a fortress. "I'm so sorry. Do you want to go?" Anthony's laugh was bitter, hollow. "To what? Watch them mourn the man they wanted me to be, or spit on the grave of the son they buried alive?" Matthew's breath warmed his hair. "Maybe closure. Or maybe not. Your call." Nights blurred into a haze of what-ifs. Anthony pored over old photos, faded Polaroids of him and Sarah building forts in the hayloft, Dad teaching him to bait a hook by the creek. The farmhouse loomed in his dreams, this clabbered siding peeling like old skin, the cross above the mantel glowing accusatory. Matthew was patient, brewing tea and listening to rants that looped like broken records. "They hated who I am," Anthony said one dawn, voice raw. "But he was my dad. And now he's just dirt." Saturday dawned brittle cold, frost etching the windows like lace. Anthony packed a black wool coat he'd bought on sale, the ring on his finger a talisman against the chill. Matthew drove him to Penn Station, kissing him fierce in the parking garage. "Call me. Anytime. I'll be here." The Amtrak rattled westward, fields blurring into the flat expanse of Pennsylvania, then Ohio's endless corn. Anthony nursed a flask of bourbon, the burn a poor substitute for courage. As the train pulled into Toledo, memories assaulted him. Summer fairs with cotton candy and Ferris wheel kisses, platonic. Back then, Mom's potato salad at church picnics, Dad's rare gruff hugs after a good little league hit. The Greyhound from There Was a Tin Can on Wheels, depositing him in Millersburg at dusk. The air smelled of manure and memory, sharp as regret. Sarah waited at the depot, older now 30, lines etched around eyes that mirrored his own. She hugged him stiffly, no words, just the crunch of gravel under tires as they drove to the family home. The farmhouse hadn't changed. Sagging porch, wind chimes tinkling like ghosts. Inside, the air was thick with pot pie and unspoken grief. Mom, frielier than he remembered, clutched his hand at the door, whispering, "Thank God you're here." Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda hovered, offering pie and platitudes. Sarah's husband, Tom, a burly mechanic with a crew cut, nodded curtly, while their two kids, wide-eyed toddlers, stared at the prodigal uncle like he was a zoo exhibit. Dinner was a minefield. Conversation skirted the elephant, Anthony's absence, his lifestyle, dancing around Dad's recliner, still dented from his weight. "He was proud of you, Tony," Mom said, voice quavering. "Always talked about your art." Anthony bit back a laugh. His art was doodles and margins, not the bold strokes of Matthew's canvases. Bed was the guest room, sheets starched and smelling of lavender. Sleep evaded him, the ceiling fan whirring accusations. At 2 a.m., he slipped downstairs for water, pausing at Dad's study. The desk was chaos, bills, seat catalogs, a half-empty bottle of Jack. Tucked beneath a ledger was a photo album, edges frayed. Heart pounding, Anthony flipped it open. Pages chronicled a life. Baby Anthony in a bassinet, gap-toothed grin at 5, cap and gown at 18. But the last entry gutted him, a newspaper clipping from the Holmes County Gazette, yellowed and creased. "Local Sun makes good in the Big Apple," the headline read, with a blurry shot of Anthony at a pride march, rainbow flag in hand, arm around Matthew. Scrawled in Dad's blocky script, "My boy." Lost to the devil's parade. Tears blurred the ink. How long had Dad watched from afar, clipping stories like talismans? Anthony's fingers trembled as he closed the album, a sob escaping. Footsteps creaked. Sarah appeared in the doorway, robe clutched tight. "You weren't supposed to see that," she said softly. "See what?" "That he hated me enough to spy," she sighed, sinking into a chair. "He didn't hate you, Tony. He was scared. For you. For us. After you left, he fell apart, drank, fought with Mom. Blamed himself for turning you." Anthony's laugh was shards of glass. "Turning me? Like I'm a fucking werewolf." "Language," she snapped, "old habits dying hard." Then softer, "He kept that scrapbook hidden. Said it was his penance. Wanted to call, apologize, but pride. You know, Dad." Silence stretched, heavy as the album in his lap. "Why now?" Anthony whispered. "Why drag me back?" Her eyes glistened. "Because he asked for you on the end. Tell Tony I'm sorry. Tell him I love him, no matter what. And I didn't. Until it was too late." The confession hung, a noose of regret. Anthony reached for her hand, the first touch in years, and they wept together for Dad, for the boy he'd been, for the family fractured by fear. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving, the kind of Ohio morning that seeped into your bones like damp regret. Anthony dressed in his black suit, the fabric stiff against skin still raw from yesterday's revelations. The mirror in the guest bath reflected a stranger, hollow-cheeked, shadows bruising his eyes, the silver ring on his finger a defiant gleam amid the funereal monochrome. Downstairs, the house stirred, Mom fussing over coffee, Sarah corralling the kids into coats, Uncle Ray loading the truck with poinsettias for the gravesite. The drive to the cemetery was silent, the Holmes County hills rolling past like waves of forgotten promises. Mary's loomed on the outskirts, its steeple piercing the low clouds, bell tolling a somber dirge. The parking lot overflowed with F-150s and Suburbans, neighbors in starched collars murmuring condolences as they filed toward the tent. Anthony hung back, letting the crowd buffer him, but eyes found him anyway, whispers rippling like wind through wheat. That's the city boy. The one who, Reverend Harlan, Dad's fishing buddy with a voice like gravel, led the service. Hymn swelled, Amazing Grace, the notes twisting Anthony's gut, while eulogies painted Dad as saint, devoted husband, pillar of the VFW, the man who'd rebuilt the county bridge after the flood. Anthony sat rigid in the folding chair, Mom's hand cold in his, Sarah's gaze averted. When Harlan called for family to speak, Uncle Ray rose, voice booming about Dad's war stories from Nam, the Purple Heart tucked in a drawer. Then Sarah stood, knees knocking. Daddy was complicated, she began, voice steadying. He loved fierce his family, his faith, his land. And he struggled with change, with letting go. Her eyes met Anthony's, plea shimmering. But in the end, he wanted us whole. No matter what, the words landed soft, a balm on old wounds. Anthony's throat tightened. He rose before he could second-guess, legs leaden as he approached the podium. Faces blurred, cousins, classmates, the widow from the diner who'd slipped him free donuts as a kid. My father, he said, voice cracking like thin ice, taught me to fix what breaks. Tractors, fences, hearts. A ripple of surprise, he pressed on. We lost our way after I left. But I see now he was fixing too. In his own broken way. I forgive him. And I hope he forgives me. Applause was polite, murmurs appreciative. Mom squeezed his hand as he sat, tears carving tracks down her powdered cheeks. He'd be proud, she whispered. Anthony nodded, the lie tasting like ash, but beneath it, a seed of truth germinated. Perhaps forgiveness wasn't absolution, but a truce. The procession to the grave was a somber parade, casket borne on shoulders past headstones etched with names like litanies. Miller, Yoder, Schwartz. Dad's plot nestled under an oak, roots clawing the earth like desperate fingers. As dirt rained down, shovels rhythmic as heartbeats, Anthony's phone vibrated. Matthew, a heart emoji and thinking of you. He typed back, holding on. Miss you. Back at the house, the wake unfolded in a haze of Jell-O salads and deviled eggs. Neighbors pressed hands, offering casseroles and condolences laced with curiosity. Heard you're doing big things in New York, Mrs. Keller said, eyes twinkling. Design? Acting? Anthony demurred. Just surviving, but the warmth chipped at his armor. A second cousin, Jake, lanky, with a beard and a rainbow pin on his lapel, cornered him by the punch bowl. Hey, man. I'm bi. Married to a guy from Akron. Dad never knew, but solidarity. The admission bridged gulfs. They swapped stories, Jake's coming out a quiet dinner revelation. His family's awkward acceptance a far cry from Anthony's exile. Time heals, Jake said, clapping his shoulder. Or at least scars over. As dusk fell, guests thinned, leaving the family to ghosts. Anthony helped Mom clear plates, the rhythm domestic, almost healing. In the kitchen, amid clinking china, she broached the unspoken. That boy in the photo. Matthew, is he good to you? Anthony paused, sponge dripping. The best. He sees me, all of me. She nodded, eyes distant. Your father. He worried. About the world out there. Sins, they called it. A sigh escaped. Heavy. But love? That's God's work. I see it in your face. The vulnerability cracked him. He hugged her then, fierce and fumbling, her frail frame trembling in his arms. I love you, Mom. Always did. Over the next days, the house thawed. Anthony fixed the leaky faucet Dad had cursed, sanded porch rails splintered by winters. Sarah joined him one afternoon in the barn, sorting tools amid hay motes dancing in sunbeams. Tom knows, she confessed, wiping dust from a wrench. About you. He was cool. Said love's love. Progress. Incremental as Ohio sunrises. Evenings, they pored over Dad's scrapbook by lamplight. Clippings of Anthony's pride photos mingled with Sarah's wedding announcement. A timeline of parallel lives. Laughter bubbled when they found Dad's doodles. Crude tractors, hearts scrawled with E+J for his parents. Romantic old fool, Mom chuckled, the sound foreign yet fitting. But fissures lingered. On Thursday, as Anthony packed for the return train, Uncle Ray pulled him aside on the porch, pipe smoke curling like accusations. Heard about your friend. City's changed you, boy. But this family's God-fearing. Don't bring that shame here again. The word stung. Venom in velvet. Anthony's fists clenched. Ring-biting palm. Shame? The only shame's in hating your own blood. He stormed inside, slamming the screen door, heart hammering. Sarah found him in the guest room, duffel half-zipped. Ray's an ass. Always has been. Ignore him. Easier said. Anthony deflated onto the bed. I thought, maybe we could heal. But it's still there. That poison. She sat beside him, hand on knee. Healing's messy, Tony. Dad died without saying sorry face to face. That's on him. But you're here. That's on you, and it's enough. Her words anchored him through the night. Sleep fitful but deep. Friday morning, he boarded the Greyhound east, the farmhouse shrinking in the rear view like a dream dissolving. Penn Station's chaos enveloped him. Hustle of suits and street performers, the city's indifferent embrace. Matthew waited at the platform, bouquet of daisies in hand, grin splitting his face. Anthony collapsed into him, burying face in wool sweater, inhaling home. I did it. Faced them. Matthew's arms tightened. Brave as hell. Tell me everything. Over diner coffee, greasy spoons and bottomless mugs, they unpacked it. The eulogy's triumph, Mom's olive branch, Ray's bigotry. Matthew listened, thumb stroking Anthony's knuckles. Sounds like a start. Not perfect, but real. Back in Bushwick, the apartment welcomed like an old friend. Sketchpad strewn, fridge humming. They made love slow and deliberate, bodies mapping familiar territories, whispers weaving promises. "Missed you," Anthony breathed, tracing Matthew's jaw. "You're my North Star." Matthew's eyes darkened. Something flickering. Guilt? Fatigue? Always. "Babe." Weeks blurred into routine. But Anthony carried Ohio like a talisman. Weekly calls to mom. Care packages of New York bagels shipped west. Sarah texted memes. A bridge of pixels. Matthew's work surged. He landed a major client. Branding for a queer film festival. Celebrations multiplied. Rooftop toasts. Gallery openings where Anthony beamed. Pride swelling. Yet shadows lengthened. Matthew's late nights stretched. Excuses piling. Client revisions. Networking drinks. Anthony brushed it off. Buried in his own ascent. A promotion to assistant manager. Barista dreams evolving into management seminars. But intuition nagged. A low hum beneath the harmony. One April evening, returning early from inventory, Anthony found the apartment dim, jazz crooning from the speakers. Matthew emerged from the bedroom, shirt untucked, hair disheveled. "Hey, you're home soon." "Yeah." "Forgot my keys." Anthony's gaze snagged on the coffee table. 2 mugs. Lipstick smudge on one. Faint pink. Not Matthew's shade. Heart stutter. He forced a smile. "Rough day." Matthew hesitated. Fraction too long. "The usual." "How was yours?" Dinner was strained. Chopsticks clacking over takeout lo mein. Anthony probed gently. "That client from the festival?" "Met up." But Matthew deflected with laughs, pivoting to wedding plans. "What about vows on the High Line? Sunset views, fairy lights." The vision soothed, momentarily. But sleep evaded Anthony, mind replaying the mug, the pause. By morning, resolve hardened. He rifled Matthew's laptop while he showered. Password, and 2013. Their first kiss date. Emails innocuous. Invoices, pitches. Then, a thread with Evan K. Design, Matthew's old Chicago roommate, ostensibly collabing on a project. Photos attached. Matthew and Evan at a dive bar, arms slung casual. Another, them laughing on a lakeside pier, wind tousling hair. Captions. "Miss these nights. Bro." Anthony's stomach roiled. Innocent? Or prelude? He confronted over breakfast. Voice steady. "Who's Evan?" Matthew's fork paused midair. Eyes widening. "College buddy." "Why?" "Saw the pics." "You too." Close. A beat. Then chuckle. "Jealous? Does work?" And he's straight, married. Relax. The reassurance landed. Mostly. Anthony apologized, blaming Ohio ghosts, and they kissed it away, bodies affirming fidelity. But the seed of doubt sprouted, watered by distance. Matthew's phone face down more often, showers lengthening. May brought pride, a riot of color and catharsis. They marched from Chelsea to the Stonewall, hand in hand amid floats blaring Lady Gaga, confetti raining like blessings. Anthony's sign, love wins, even in Ohio, drew cheers, a reporter snapping their photo for the Post. That night, rooftop party with friends, tequila shots and toasts to resilience. Matthew pulled him close amid the throng, murmuring, "This is us. Forever." June sweltered, city a steam bath. Anthony's calls home grew frequent. Mom sharing garden updates, Sarah announcing pregnancy. Aunt Tony, she teased, the nickname warming him. Matthew joined one call, charming as ever. Tell her congrats from the future brother-in-law, but cracks widened. A forgotten anniversary dinner, Matthew stuck at Evan's studio, left Anthony solo at their favorite Italian spot, pasta congealing untouched. He walked home alone, East River glittering mocking under moon. Text, sorry, babe. Traffic. Love you, trust frayed like denim. Anthony buried it in wedding prep. Invitations etched with subway maps, vows drafted on napkins. Carla, their therapist, sensed the shift in session. Boundaries, Anthony. Talk before it festers. He did, over a tense dinner. Evan, it's not just work, is it? Matthew's face crumpled. God, no. He's a friend. But, yeah, I've been distant. Stressed. The gig's intense. Honesty, partial. They recommitted, date nights enforced. Phones transparent. Summer waned. Heat breaking in August storms that mirrored Anthony's turmoil. A weekend getaway to the Catskills. Cabin by a lake. No signal. Just them. Hiking trails hand in hand. Skinny dipping at dusk. Stars wheeling overhead as they made promises anew. Fall gilded the leaves. Wedding 3 months away. Matthew's designs graced billboards. His name whispered in art circles. Anthony beamed at openings. But unease lingered, a sixth sense, honed by loss. Then, October 15th, Anthony's birthday. Balloons from coworkers, cake from mom shipped overnight. Matthew promised early return from a meeting. 9 p.m., silence. 10 voicemail, running late. Celebrate tomorrow, rage simmered to resolve. Anthony grabbed keys, drove to Evan's studio in Soho loft space, windows glowing. Peering through blinds, heart in throat, Matthew and Evan, entwined on a leather couch, lips locked in a kiss that shattered worlds. The world narrowed to that sliver of light through the blinds. Matthew's hand cupping Evan's jaw, their bodies a tangle of betrayal that knifed Anthony's chest. He staggered back. While rising, the city's cacophony, honking taxis, distant sirens, muffling to a roar in his ears. Rain slicked the sidewalk as he fled, tears mingling with droplets, the silver ring burning like a brand. He ended up at the Stonewall Echo, the bar where it all began, neon sign buzzing like a migraine. The bartender, Rico, a silver fox with tattoos snaking up his arms, poured a double without asking. Rough night, kid. Anthony downed it, the whiskey a fire that dulled the ache. You could say that. Words spilled then. A dam breaking. The farmhouse ghosts. The fragile mending. The love he'd built brick by painful brick. Rico nodded, polishing glasses. Betrayal's the worst cut. Deeper than hate, 'cause it comes from who you trust. Another round. Then a cab home, Anthony too wrecked to walk. The apartment was dark when he arrived. Matthew's keys absent from the hook. Anthony stripped the bed, sheets reeking of their mornings, and curled on the bare mattress, sobs racking until exhaustion claimed him. Dawn crept in, gray as grief. Matthew slipping through the door at 6 a.m., reeking of cologne not his own. Babe, you up? Guilt laced his voice. Anthony rose, face stone. Where were you? Matthew froze, eyes darting. Evans. Pitch went long. Crashed on his couch. Liar. The word hung. Lethal. Anthony's phone whipped out. Photo snapped blurry through the window. Timestamp damning. Matthew's color drained. Anth. Wait. It's not. Save it. Anthony hurled the phone. It skittered across tile. How long? Matthew sank to the futon, head in hands. 3 months. God. I'm sorry. It was stupid, a weak moment after drinks. He gets me, the design world, and I felt lost. With the wedding pressure, Dad calling about grandkids. Grandkids. Anthony's laugh was feral. From the man who proposed, who held me through my father's funeral. Matthew reached. Anthony recoiled. I love you. This was a mistake. We can fix. No, the finality echoed. You broke us. Get out. Matthew begged. Tears. Promises. Knees on the floor. But Anthony's heart was Ohio winter. Barren. By noon, Matthew's duffel bulged at the door. Eyes red-rimmed. Don't throw away 10 years. You did that. Door shut. Lock clicked. Silence descended, heavier than lead. Days bled into numbness. Anthony called off work. Cocooned in flannel, binging Queer as Folk reruns that mocked his wreckage. Friends rallied. Jake from Ohio overnighting pie. Rico comping drinks. Carla squeezing in an emergency session. Grief's a bastard, she said. But you're not defined by this. Mom's call pierced the fog. Tony, you sound off. Everything all right? He crumbled, confessing fragments, the cheating, the chasm. Her paws stretched. Then, oh, honey, come home. We'll bake. The invitation tempted, but New York was his battlefield. He returned to the cafe, steaming lattes with mechanical precision, tips donated to the Trevor Project. Nights, he wandered the village, tracing paths with Matthew's ghost. The bench in the park, now etched with lovers' initials, the bridge where they danced under fireworks. Sarah arrived unannounced a week later, toddler in tow, Tom wrangling luggage. Mom sent me. Said you need family. They crashed on the air mattress. Chaos, a bomb, spaghetti dinners with juice spills. Story time with the giving tree. Over coffee one dawn, Sarah hugged him. Betrayal sucks. Tom cheated once, early on. Almost left. But we talked, really talked. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's choice. Anthony traced his ring, now loose on finger. Can't. Not yet. You don't have to. But don't let him steal your light. Her visit anchored him. Ohio warmth in concrete cold. By month's end, the ring went into a drawer. Wedding invites shredded like confetti from a funeral. Matthew texted apologies. Daily, then weekly, blocked without reply. Work promoted him to manager. He mentored a shy barista coming out. Their shared vulnerability a quiet victory. November chilled the air. Leaves carpeting sidewalks in crimson decay. Anthony volunteered at the food bank, ladling soup to the city's forgotten, queer youth with eyes haunted as his once were. One kid, Javier, 16 and fresh from Jersey rejection, reminded him of his younger self. How do you keep going? Javier asked, spoon trembling. You build a new family, Anthony said, handing him a card for a shelter. One heart at a time. Thanksgiving loomed. Solitary. He hosted strays. Javier. Rico. A drag queen from the bar named Luna. Turkey charred but edible. laughter echoing off walls still bare from Matthew's art. Toasts raised, to chosen kin, and for the first time since the shatter, Anthony smiled genuine. But fate, cruel jester, wasn't done. December 5th. Mom's call, voice fracturing. Tony, Sarah. Car accident. Tom's fine, but she's gone. And the baby. The world tilted, Ohio's fields blurring in memory. Anthony booked the red-eye, grief compounding like interest. The farmhouse welcomed in white silence, snow muffling the sobs. Funeral small, Sarah's plot beside Dad's, a tiny urn for the unborn nestled close. Mom clung to him, frail as tissue. She loved you so, she whispered at the grave. Said you were her hero. Eulogy duty again. Words choking. Sarah was the bridge between who I was and who I am. She saw me, really saw, and loved anyway. Uncle Ray wept openly, bigotry thawed by loss. Even Tom, bandaged arm in sling, gripped Anthony's hand. She'd want us tight. For the kids, back in the city, winter bit deep. Anthony's shifts blurred, caffeine his crutch. Dreams haunted. Sarah laughing in the hayloft, Matthew's kiss turning to ash. Carla urged processing. Journal it, scream it, but release. He did. Pages filling with rage-scrawled truths. The farmhouse hate. Matthew's betrayal. Sarah's light snuffed too soon. Spring teased with crocuses, but Anthony's bloom stalled. A letter arrived. Matthew's handwriting. Envelope postmarked Chicago. I saw about Sarah. Devastated. I'm in therapy. Rebuilding. If there's space for forgiveness, not for us, but for you, I'm here. No expectations. Love always. Matt. Anthony burned it in the sink. Flames dancing like demons. But embers lingered, warming unexpectedly. Summer hummed. Pride a bittersweet parade. Anthony marched solo. Sign evolved. Love endures betrayal. Javier, now out and proud, joined him, arm linked. Post-march. At a block party, Evan appeared awkward, eyes downcast. Heard from Matt. I'm sorry. It was my fault. Pushing when he was vulnerable. Anthony's fist clenched, but words came measured. Own your shit. But don't expect absolution. Evan nodded, slinking away. A chapter closed. Fall waned, leaves mirroring Anthony's slow unfurling. Mom visited, frail but fierce, touring the high line where vows never spoken. Beautiful, she breathed. Like you. Thanksgiving redux, expanded table, Javier's family, even Tom with the kids via video. Laughter genuine, high perfect. As snow dusted again, Anthony's ring resurfaced, not on finger, but chain around neck, a relic reclaimed. New Year's Eve found him on the Brooklyn Bridge, wind whipping, city exploding in light. No resolutions, just quiet vow, to love wholly, scars and all. Phone buzzed, unknown number. Matthew's voice, tentative, Happy New Year. And just wanted you to know I'm rooting for you. Silence. Then, thanks. Same. Click. Not reconciliation, but release. 2026 dawned crisp. Promise in the frost. Anthony's cafe expanded. A second location queer-owned. He dated, casual coffees. No rings yet, Learning Trust's tentative dance. Mom's letters brimmed with garden triumphs, a quiet pride in her son's orbit. One April afternoon, sorting mail, a package, Dad's scrapbook, shipped from Sarah's attic. Final page, new clipping, Anthony at Pride. Headline, Local Hero Feeds Hundreds. Dad's script, faded, proud. Finally, tears fell, but smiles followed. Betrayal's sting dulled to lesson, hate to history. Anthony walked the village, head high, heart mended, not whole, but human. Yet humanity, Anthony discovered, was a mosaic of fractures, beautiful in breakage, resilient in repair. The scrapbook became his altar, pages thumbed during quiet shifts, Dad's cursive a haunting echo. Proud, one word, etched posthumously, but potent as gospel. It fueled him through the cafe's grand opening in May. Rainbow awnings fluttering over the East Village stoop, lines snaking around the block for lavender lattes and allyship scones. Javier manned the espresso bar, grin wide. Mom beamed via FaceTime from the farmhouse. Her go. Tony, carrying across states. Success bred scrutiny. A timeout feature dubbed it the queer cup that heals, thrusting Anthony into spotlights he'd dodged since the funeral. Interviews probed. From Ohio exile to NYC mogul, how? He'd pause. Ring chain glinting under studio lights. Then, by loving anyway. Despite the hate, the hurt, whispers followed of Matthew's spiral. Evan ghosting clients. Chicago gigs drying up. Anthony tuned them out, curating his peace yoga in McCarran Park. Brunches with Luna's crew. Therapy marathons unpacking paternal ghosts. Carla retired that summer, passing torch to Diego, a soft-spoken Cuban with a knack for metaphors. You're not rebuilding, Diego said one session, as thunder rumbled. You're evolving. Like lightning, destructive, then illuminating. Evolving meant risks. A blind date in June, Theo, a lit teacher from Queens, all curls and quick wit. Dinner at a Nolita bistro stretched to midnight walks. His laugh a melody Anthony hadn't heard since Matthew's heyday. Kisses tentative, promising more, but Anthony pulled back after 3 dates, heart whispering caution. Not ready, he confessed over gelato. Theo nodded. No pressure. When you are, the offer stands. July's heat wave baked the city, tempers flaring with humidity. Anthony's phone rang mid-shift. Tom, voice thick. The kids. They miss Aunt Tony. Wondered if you'd visit. For Sarah, the pull was magnetic. Grief's undertow. He flew Midwest, landing in Cleveland's muggy embrace. The kids, now 4 and 6, gap-toothed echoes of Sarah, tackled him at the airport. Sticky hugs and Uncle Tony chants. Tom's split-level ranch smelled of crayons and mac and cheese, a shrine to normalcy amid loss. Weekends blurred. Zoo trips with giraffe feedings, creek picnics where Anthony skipped stones, teaching city tricks like subway origami. Nights, Tom cracked beers on the deck, stars pricking the ink-black sky. Sarah, be proud, Tom said one evening, fireflies winking. Of your cafe. Of you, period. Anthony sipped, foam bitter. Miss her. Every damn day. Me too. But life's moving. Dated a nurse, nice gal. Feels wrong, but right. Vulnerability bridged them. By week's end, Anthony met the nurse. Lisa, warm smile. No judgments. Heard about your story, she said over burgers. Inspires me. The visit mended rifts. Ohio's heart beating steady. Back in New York, Anthony channeled it. A Sarah's Fund donation drive at the cafe. Proceeds to queer youth scholarships. Checks poured in. Lives touched. A ripple from one woman's light. August brought monsoons. Streets rivers of regret. Matthew materialized at the cafe store one downpour. Drenched and diminished. Cheeks hollowed. Eyes shadowed. Can we talk? 5 minutes. Anthony's pulse thundered. Baristas glancing curious. Out back. Quick. Alley reeked of dumpsters. Rain sluicing gutters. Matthew shivered. Words tumbling. I fucked up. Therapy's kicking my ass. Unpacking Dad's expectations. My fear of settling. Evan was escape. Not love. But losing you. It's hell. Anthony leaned against brick. Arms crossed. Hell's what you put me through. After Sarah. After everything. Matthew nodded. Rain beating lashes. I know. No excuses. Just, I see you now, really see. The man you became without me. And I miss being part of it. Silence stretched. Thunder underscoring. Anthony's voice emerged even. I forgive you, Matt. For me. Not us. Move on. We both deserve that. Matthew's shoulders sagged. Relief? Defeat? Thank you. Be well, Anth. He vanished into the deluge. A ghost exorcised. Anthony returned inside. Apron tied fresh. A weight lifted like fog burning off. September gilded Central Park. Tourists crunching leaves. Anthony's life layered. Cafe thriving. Theo circling back for just coffee that bloomed to dinners. Hands brushing intentional. Vulnerability crept. Sharing scrapbook scans. Ohio Tales sans armor. Theo listened. His own closet scars from Bible Belt, Texas mirroring Anthony's. We're survivors, he'd say. Kissing knuckles. Let's thrive. Mom's health waned that fall, flu turning pneumonia. Hospital beeps a dirge. Anthony shuttled west, holding her hand in sterile light. Proud of you, Tony, she rasped, oxygen mask fogging. Love. No matter. He stayed through remission, baking her hospital jello molds, reading psalms with a twist, queer parables of prodigal sons welcomed home. Discharge brought her to New York for a month. Wheelchair tours of MoMA, Broadway matinees, Rent, tears streaming. Your father's smiling, she said at Wicket's curtain. Green glow on her face. Up there, Thanksgiving anchored tradition. Expanded feast. Tom and kids flying in. Lisa charming the chaos. Toast to Sarah. To Dad's hidden pride. To futures unwritten. Javier proposed to his boyfriend over pie. Ring glinting. Cheers erupted. Anthony's eyes misting. Winter's hush settled. Holidays a tapestry of chosen and blood. Anthony and Theo strung lights on the fire escape. Ornaments blending Ohio heirlooms with Brooklyn grit. Christmas Eve Mass at St. Bart's. Mom's insistence saw Anthony kneeling, not for dogma, but peace. God, if you're listening, he whispered, thanks for the mess. It made me. New Year dawned with Theo's arm around him. Fireworks blooming over the river. Resolutions? None. Just presence. 2027 unfurled verdant. Cafe chain grew, third spot in Harlem. Menu nods to Sarah's potato salad. Anthony keynote at a queer business summit. Voice steady. Hate tried to bury me. Betrayal tried to break me. But love, messy, human, resurrected. Theo moved in that spring. Boxes mingling books and brushes. Mornings. Coffee shared. Kisses lazy. No rush for rings. Trust rebuilt deliberate. Like good espresso, slow drip. Rich yield. Mom's letters slowed. But calls warmed. Garden updates. Tom's engagement news. A wedding, she teased. Yours next, Anthony laughed. Patience. Mom. Summer solstice. Anthony scattered Sarah's ashes by the creek. Permission from Tom. Kids tossing wildflowers. Water gurgled benediction. Dragonflies skimming. Love you, sis, he murmured. Ring chain warm against skin. Bridgewell, back east. Theo proposed on the high line. Kneeling amid wildflowers. Bach simple. Evolve with me? Anthony's yes was whisper. Then shout. Strangers applauding. Wedding small. Village chapel. Rainbow stole on the officiant. Vows echoed Matthew's once dreamed. But truer. In scars and stars. I choose you. Mom front row. Tears joyful. Tom best man. Kids flower bearers. Reception at the cafe. Cupcakes rainbow frosted. Dances till dawn. Honeymoon in Provincetown. Dunes and dunes. Hands clasped against tides. This, Theo breathed at sunset, is forever. Anthony smiled. Ohio winds faint. Damn right. Years layered. Cafes franchised. A cookbook birthed. Brewed with love. Queer recipes for the soul. Kids came. Adopted twins. Brown-skinned whirlwinds named after Sarah and Dad. Sarah and Daniel. Mornings chaotic. Laughter raining. Mom passed gently at 85. Farmhouse sold but memories parceled. Funeral brought full circle. Uncle Ray eulogizing unity. Anthony speaking of bridges built. Graveside. He laid the scrapbook. Dad's proud page open to sky. Old age crept graceful. Gray at temples. Theo's curls silver. They mentored Javier's cafe chain. Javier's kids calling them Tio Tony and Tio Theo. Retirees. They wandered Europe. Hands gnarled but linked. On a crisp November dawn. 2045. 20 years post-betrayal. Anthony woke to Theo's breathing. Steady. Outside. Brooklyn stirred. He traced the ring chain. Now tattooed equivalent on wrist. Intertwined A's and M's. Faded but fierce. Love you, Theo murmured. Eyes cracking open. Always. Anthony kissed him. Tasting lifetimes. In the end, betrayal hadn't defined him. Hate hadn't erased him. Love raw, redemptive had remade him. And in that remaking, he'd walked not away, but toward a man whole, a legacy luminous. But legacies, Anthony reflected in his sunset years, were less monuments than murmurs, ripples widening from a single stone's plunge. The twins, now teens with Sarah's fire and Daniel's quiet steel, grilled him over dinner one evening in their brownstone. Grandpa Tony, tell us about the farmhouse again. The real version, not the kid-safe one, he chuckled. Fork pausing over pot roast, Theo's recipe, tweaked with Ohio herbs Mom had mailed decades back. Theo, across the table, arched a brow, lips quirking. Careful, love. They'll demand field trips. Anthony leaned back. The room's walls a gallery of their lives. Sarah's birth announcement beside Dad's scrapbook photo. Daniel's science fair ribbon next to a New York Times clipping of the Cafe Empire's milestone. "All right," he began, voice gravelly with age but steady. "Picture this, endless cornfields, like green oceans under big skies. And a boy, me, who knew he was different, even before he had words for it." The tale unfolded, sanitized for young ears. The confession storm, the bus to freedom, Matthew's light and shadow. Betrayal glossed as a hard lesson in trust. Sarah's loss a reminder to hug tight. The kids hung on every word, Sarah's eyes flashing indignation at the hate part. Daniel sketching the farmhouse in his notebook, lines precise, capturing the porch's sag. Theo squeezed Anthony's knee under the table, a silent anchor. After dishes, as the twins scampered to homework, Theo pulled him to the stoop. "City, hum a lullaby. You make it sound epic." Like a novel. It was. Anthony nestled into his shoulder, silver curls tickling nose. Our novel, their story, indeed, had pages unturned. Post-wedding, the cafes boomed, but so did advocacy. Anthony testifying before City Council for queer youth housing. Theo illustrating children's books. The Boy Who Built Bridges, veiled autobiography. Javier partnered, their chains merging under a rainbow umbrella corp. Challenges came, uninvited. 2030's recession shuttered a spot, forcing layoffs Anthony wept over. "We rise," Theo said, remortgaging their home for seed money. They did pivot to delivery, community pop-ups in parks. Triumphs balanced. 2035 Pride Grand Marshal nod. Parade float a cafe cart pouring metaphorical lattes of love. Family wove tighter. Tom remarried Lisa. Weddings blended Ohio wholesomeness with New York flair. The twins visited annually, hayrides turning to drone shows, but roots held. Sarah came out at 14 lesbian. Fierce, Anthony's coming out tales her shield. "You blazed it, Grandpa," she said, hugging fierce. Daniel, straight ally, organized school GSA, his sketches funding grazers. Aging brought aches. Theo's hip replacement in 42, Anthony's pacemaker 44. But intimacy endured, slow dances in the kitchen to Coltrane, hands tracing familiar maps. "Still my North Star," Anthony whispered one anniversary, candles flickering. Matthew resurfaced sporadically. A 2030 Christmas card from Chicago, sober and partnered. 2040 email congratulating the twins' adoptions. Anthony replied polite, boundaries firm, cordial ghosts, no hauntings. Mom's legacy bloomed posthumously. Her diaries, discovered in attic, revealed Dad's private wrestlings, letters unsent to Anthony, pleas for understanding. "I failed you, son. But God's grace is wider than my fear." Anthony published excerpts anonymously in a memoir, Fields of Forgiveness, bestseller in queer lit circles, royalties endowing scholarships. Grandkids arrived. Sarah's wife birthing a boy in 40, Daniel's partner twins girls 43. Anthony and Theo doted story hours with Bridge Boy, lullabies of Ohio creeks. "Love's a chain," he'd tell them, links glinting. Strongest when mended. Final chapter loomed gentle. 2050. Autumn gold. Anthony, 83, felt the pull, tired bones, but soul sated. Theo, ever vigilant, scheduled checkups, but scans whispered finality. Months, maybe, they faced it head-on. Hospice homebound. Twins rotating vigils. No regrets, Theo asked one dusk. Hand in hand by window, Manhattan skyline eternal. None. Anthony's thumb stroked knuckles. You? The farm? The fall? Theo's smile crinkled eyes. Best plot twist ever. Friends streamed. Javier with grandbabies. Luna in sequins. Even Tom Gray. Widowed Lisa 2 years prior, sharing beers and barbs. Sarah's watching, Tom said, voice thick. Smirking at us old farts. Passover came. Family Seder. Questions flying. What's the hardest journey? Zaid? The boy asked. Anthony pondered. Matzah crisp. From hate to heart. Yours is next. Make it kind. Theo slipped first. May morning, peaceful. Breath easing into eternity. Anthony held him, whispering vows renewed. Tears salt on lips. Funeral riverside. Ashes to the East River. Rainbow flags snapping salute. Eulogies wove their tapestry. Theo's art. Their love. A life defiant. Widowhood hollowed, but filled slow. Mornings journaling by the Hudson. Afternoons mentoring at the cafe, now museum piece. Run by grandkids. Dreams visited. Matthew young and grinning. Sarah Hayloft laughing. Dad clipping headlines. Proud, they'd chorus. Anthony's end came November 16th, 2055, full circle. Rain tapping windows like Ohio storms. Twins bedside. Grandkids clustered. He gathered them. Love. No matter. Build bridges. Last breath. Theo's face in mind. Blue-green eyes. Endless. Burial simple. Brooklyn Cemetery. Plot beside Theo's. Headstone etched. Anthony and Theo lovers. Builders. Eternal. Service eclectic. Rabbi. Reverend. Drag hymns. Sarah spoke. He walked from hate, through betrayal, to us. His light endures, in death, as life, ripples widened. Cafes global, brewed with love curricula in schools. Memoir sequels penned by Daniel, bridges unbroken, grandkids carried rings, chains to wrists, vows to voices. And in some celestial diner, Anthony poured lattes with Theo, winking at newcomers. Rough start? We've got the fix. Love. Black. No returns. The end? Not quite. Just the hook to heaven's next chapter.